Hey everyone, it's Jamie and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing another speed build. This is one that I've built before. This is a build I built before. It's on my gallery page, but I decided to rebuild it, and that is we're doing the Pink Palace from the stop motion adaptation of Neil Gaiman's Coraline. So I just wanted to do this because this was a build I did a very long time ago and was very proud of, but I definitely am like, yeah, I can build it better now. And I do think I generally built it better. There are a few things that I'm not in love with, and I feel like those just came at the sacrifice of trying to make the build a little bit more accurate to the film set that they created for the stop motion animation. So I first want to just kind of discuss the book. So I'm a huge fan of this book. I read it back in middle school, which was a long time ago for me. But the book came out in 2002, and it's technically a novella. And a novella is kind of what publishers would categorize as a book that is between a short story and a novel. It's not quite long enough for it to be considered a novel, they would say, but it's much longer than a short story. I do think part of the definition also, I think, has to relate to how the prose are structured. Novels tend to have a little bit longer prose, sometimes a little bit more poetic. This definitely has a little bit more of a structure, like sentence-wise, to a short story. I do think there's maybe even kind of, within publishing, the publishing world, I do think there's kind of this tendency to think of novellas maybe being for younger crowds, but I don't think that's a very true thought, because The Great Gatsby, for example, is definitely a novella. It's often categorized as a novel by a lot of different publishing companies and by a lot of I guess like a lot of libraries too, but by its word count, The Great Gatsby and Coraline fall more into novella. And I do think there's this idea that Coraline is like a story for kids, when it's a really horrifying tale. So I own the 10th anniversary cover, which has a very kind of creepy cover to it, as well as it has a Q&A in the back where they talk a little bit about between Neil Gaiman, and they talk about, you know, like different inspirations for the book, as well as there's also some literary questions in the back, which this is something I usually ignore in books, but I do think it can be fun, especially if you're like looking to discuss the book with other people. So Coraline is a book that came out in 2002. It's been heralded by many people as being one of the best novels of the 21st century. The Guardian ranked it on 82 of the best 100 books of the 21st century, so that's pretty exciting. I hope as the 21st century goes on, it will definitely remain on that list, because I actually do think it's a great piece of literature. Neil Gaiman's really great when it comes to his world building, with also creating his own sense of like mythology for the world. And I think that's a very like unique thing to Neil Gaiman that I think a lot of authors can look at and be like really inspired by, as well as just the story and its structure itself is so interesting. So the story is about a girl named Coraline, for those who don't know. Her and her family, they move into a new house. In the novella, it's not specifically explained where this new house is, but they move into this kind of old home that's been divided into different flats. And some of the other tenants are Miss Spink and Miss Forcible, two elderly retired stage women, and then Mr. Bobo, who is just initially referred to as the crazy old man upstairs who claims to be running like this mouse circus. Then there's a flat beside Coraline's that is unoccupied, and there's a small door that links them together. And this is, you know, for those who are more familiar with the movie, you might be thinking this sounds familiar, but slightly different. There are changes, but for the most part, I would say the story in the novella and the movie kind of pretty much are, I wouldn't say they're identical, but they're very similar. Like, for example, throughout the novella, if I remember correctly, I haven't read it in a few years, she has different dreams where she meets these different ghosts who then she meets later in the story. And they tell her a little bit more about the beldam, who she refers to as the other mother. The beldam being kind of like this old archaic word for witch. Once again, going into kind of like his creation of mythology for this story. And then as the story goes on, the other mother, wants Coraline to join her in the other world, this other world being beautiful, majestic. But eventually she uses her kind of clever and wits to be able to defeat the beldam and, move on and save her parents. So in then 2009, there was a film adaptation that came out, which was a stop motion animation. A stop motion animation is where you build the set physically and you'll build the characters and you will move them yourself. And it takes things like you take like 1 million shots for like 2 seconds of footage. It's a very intense medium. I think it's very visually beautiful. It's definitely a very costly one, which is why you don't see too many stop motion animated films. You definitely do see, specifically from the studio that created Coraline, is called Laika. They every few years come out with a new stop motion film. Coraline was their first feature film, actually. Laika's list of films I have right here. So it's Coraline, Paranorman, The Box Trolls, Kubo and the Two Strings, and Missing Link. And actually, from what I've seen, wait, here on this list it's also claiming The Corpse Bride is. I don't think that's true. Yeah, Corpse Bride is definitely not from Laika, is it? Am I crazy? I don't think it is. Who? Oh, I guess, it was in conjunction with Tim Burton Productions. Yeah, I guess there are a few other films that called Slacker Cats, Kings of California, A Very Harold and Kumar 3D Christmas. Those, I believe, those are technically not the same thing. Like, they were part of the production, but they weren't 100% Laika. But yeah, so the Laika films, once again, are Coraline, Paranorman, Box Trolls, Kubo and the Two Strings, and The Missing Link. Coraline being their first one, coming out in 2009. And I think all of these movies are pretty good. I would think maybe Box Trolls might be my least favorite, but I haven't seen Missing Link yet. I definitely wanted to see, but I just never got around to it. Box Trolls was funny. I didn't think it was bad. Kubo and the Two Strings is a beautiful film. It definitely has some issues that some people talk about with them casting white voice actors to play these kind of like Japanese characters. Did it play in Japan, or did I just make that up? Yes. For a minute there, I almost had a panic attack. I was like, oh my god, did I just make that up? But I still think it's a beautiful film. And it was directed by Henry Selick. Selick, I think is how you pronounce his name. He was also the director behind The Nightmare Before Christmas, which a lot of people think Tim Burton's the director. He's the producer and the person who came up with the concept for it. But I'm assuming he probably didn't know what it would be like to direct an animated film, and probably wanted to get someone who actually had, some kind of history in that. So he brought in Henry Selick. And then Henry Selick and the author of Coraline, Neil Gaiman, they met... I'd heard a story about how they... I can't remember at the top, but they had met. And pretty much, I guess, they just hit it off. And, they just knew that it was going to work out. So the aesthetic of the film, the fact that they chose to do stop motion, I think was part of it because they knew this movie was going to be, no matter what, probably aimed at a lot of children. So they wanted to do probably stop motion, one, to kind of appeal to that demographic, as well as also if this had been done in, like, in my opinion, if they'd done this like with CGI or something, it probably would have looked bad. If they did like a live action with CGI, I feel like it would have looked bad, and maybe also would have probably been too scary, because like there's some like pretty creepy things in it. And some changes that the movie makes is they decide to specifically make, like very specifically make the home a Victorian. And, you know, part of the reason for that, like, does make sense. A lot of old Victorian homes do end up, you know, they do end up becoming apartment buildings. They end up getting, especially like the little, how the homes themselves will be cut up into different apartments. Very similar to how in the book they talk about how this old house has been split up into flats. As well as there's a visual language there here in America, but in the Western world in general also, that we associate Victorians with something like creepy and dark. Like there's a very specific reason, for example, that Norman Bates lives in a Victorian home. It's supposed to tell us, the audience, that something's wrong there. We've for a very long time now, have associated Victorians with something sinister and creepy. I've talked about this in plenty of videos. And it just has to do with, you know, how Victorians have changed in our perception and who we associate them with now. So it makes sense that they would pick a Victorian. And then the way they split up the Victorian, like just like the general aesthetic works really well. There's kind of like a fun fantasiful. I'm saying that word wrong, but it's very fantastic at times, like especially when Coraline's in the other world. And I think just the using stop motion really, in a way, can create that visual language that helps connect the whole world together, while also being able to do the fantasy elements well and having it still feel like it ties in. So that was definitely my so I understand why they did a stop motion. I still think it's a beautiful film. It turned 10 last year. It's one of the best films, I think, made in the 21st century, and the book itself, I definitely agree that's one of the best books written in the 21st century as well. I'm very biased. It's one of my favorite books. Neil Gaiman's one of my favorite authors. He's amazing. But now I want to switch to talk a little bit about the building process here, because like I said, I built this once before, and there were issues with that build, and that just being, I don't think I was very good at the time at really being able to build homes. Now, however, there was an issue that I was running into here, where now that I'm a little bit better at being able to see something and mimicking it in The Sims a little bit better, there comes like a price you pay, essentially. For example, in The Sims 4, it's really, like as you've seen here, I'm trying to make the roof match the roof how it looks in the movie to how it looks more in The Sims, and with that it being that the how high up the roof goes attaching to the roof on the third level, it just doesn't match up well in The Sims. Like you'll see here, I end up just going for it, and you see there's clipping that comes in, which when you're playing in it, it's kind of annoying. So I would definitely suggest, if you're going to download this and play with it, the main living space, the space where Coraline and her family lived in, the main body of the home, that's definitely where the best gameplay is. Then in the basement apartment I do, where Miss Forcible and Miss Fink live, That definitely, once again, that one's pretty good. That's a decent place. And then I would say, yeah, the attic is the hardest to play with. So if you're going to download this and play with it, just keep that in mind, I guess. But other than that, I'm very proud of this build. And I'm very proud of what I did with the backyard. When I first did this build originally, I had struggled a lot with what to do for the backyard, really. When I first built it, it was just so plain and ugly, and I wasn't really good at terrain tools at the time, so I didn't use terrain tools. I ended up using terrain tools this time to kind of create a little bit more of a shape. You'll see that when we get there. And also just like how the house looks itself, I feel so much better about. When I first built it, I feel like it looked kind of like, I'm so proud of that first build, because mostly just because of I was shocked that I had built that at my current level. But now, you know, it's been a while. I'm definitely a lot much better at building now than I was then. So it just kind of felt like, okay, it's time to rebuild it. I think also where I'm working on my save file, I have builds in that are alluding to allude to buildings in homes. I mean, buildings that are seen in movies and in books, and in paintings. Like, I have a few like references here and there, and part of that is I think it's fun to do that. So I decided, you know, I would like the Pink Palace in my save file for when I finally, if I ever release it. So it just kind of makes sense for me to include it in this one, and to rebuild it. Because the original one I did, I was looking at it, I was like, I just don't even felt like I could properly salvage it. Like, there's been a few older builds I've done that I'm still proud of that I go back to, and I will, I'll change certain things about them. If the floor plan wasn't good, you know, like, oh, I can just redo the floor plan. Or, if now, since we have convertible stairs, I'm like, yeah, the floor plan or how the stairs work will just work so much better now. So I can take some of my older builds and actually make them really good. However, my original Pink Palace, it just kind of felt like the best thing to do would be to just quit while I'm ahead and restart. So that's what I decided to do. And I'm pretty happy with how it came out. You'll be able to get this off the gallery. You can look up Pink Palace, or you can just go to my page, Jaymehorne. It's all one word, Jaymehorne. You can just I have so many other builds there. Feel free to check them out. But this one I'm definitely very proud of. And I will say, so I was trying to keep the outside as limited to as many packs as possible. So if you don't have all the packs that I use to furnish it, the only packs I would feel it, I guess if you want the home to be in the structure that it's in, at its most, the main packs I used were Strangerville, Seasons. Is that it? Oh. And I definitely, for those, I also use a little bit of Cats and Dogs. And I guess the windows on the side there are romantic garden stuff. I have to really get better at, like, limiting my packs. It's one of the things where, like, I hate limiting my packs just for the sole reason of I love having as many tools as possible to use, but also if I wanted to, I could have easily limited this to a handful of packs. Like, I really could have done the outside and probably the entire furnishing if I really wanted to, like base game in Strangerville and vampires, if that's like what I really wanted. And I'm not against doing that. I've definitely done builds like that. And I also am one of those people who definitely advocates that, like, you don't need every pack to build something good in The Sims, especially in The Sims 4, where, like, they definitely are splitting up content so much that they're really doing it for the sake of, like, how much money they can get out of us. then I'm definitely kind of like, listen, I get it. If you don't want to invest in all the packs, like, it's very pricey, and it is a little annoying because in The Sims 3 there was like a lot of things that came in base game, or a lot more things came in each pack. But I will say, on the flip side, some of the content in The Sims 4 I think just does better in being split up in different packs. Like the supernaturals, in my opinion, in The Sims 4 are so much better than The Sims 3. Like, our occult sims are just so much better. The occult sims in The Sims 3, in my opinion, are kind of boring. But, you know, that's just me. But as you see here, what I'm doing now is, you see that little box I built there? I built that with the intention that it could be like a bathroom downstairs or something, you know, a little box right by the stairs. But I end up using that to make like a secret passageway. You'll see it later. Because essentially I was realizing in this, you know, The Sims 4, we don't have little portals to, we don't have little portals we can use to make, to like go to like a mirror version of our homes or whatever. And I can guarantee you no one wants that. But I was like, I still want to keep the spirit of the book is alive as much as possible. And I was thinking, okay, so how can I do that? So you'll see later what I end up doing. I'm pretty happy with what I did to pretty much solve. It's not really an issue, but to be able to do it. Up here on the second floor, I'm starting to work out the floor plan. And I was kind of, I don't think it's bad that it was kind of boxy, in the sense that that everything was very angular, but I ended up going back and adding these other different angles to kind of give the room feel like it's a little bit more breathing space that's not so boxy. But like, it definitely didn't need that, but I wanted that just because, I don't know, it felt nice. I also feel like really boxy shapes in The Sims 4 don't always translate well. They just really look bad sometimes, and I don't know what it is about The Sims 4 that makes that happen. I'd be interested to hear some people's theories, or if someone could like actually explain. Maybe it has to do with how like the game is set up or whatever. Who knows? Lots of things, you know, I don't understand about game design. But yeah, so, you know, just to kind of solve that issue up on the upper floor, you know, that's what I wanted to do. I ended up putting a window up here in the attic also, because I just thought it'd be nice to give Mr. As in the movie, he's called Mr. Bobinski. In the novella, he's Mr. Bobo. That's one of the little changes they do. He lives upstairs in the film, and I was kind of like, you know, we need some light up here. And like I said, I would definitely say, if you're gonna have a sim live up here, use the with University. If for those who have it, we got the new apartment system, not apartment, like, I guess it's kind of like an apartment, but it's like a roommate system where you can get a new roommate, essentially, and you put out an ad for it, and these are NPCs that you don't play, you don't control them, but they kind of can come help pay bills, and in this situation what you would do is you would designate which bed is theirs, and then you would probably lock them out from being able to enter your apartment, and that way, so they just do whatever, they just like won't waltz into your, like, where you live and just like start you know, cooking or whatever. So that's what how I envision this to work. So here in the living room, I was trying to give it kind of, in the movie, there's kind of like a round shape to the room. And I was trying to do that. I also wanted to still be spacious enough. I ended up cramming it with a lot of stuff. That's because a lot of Victorian homes were very crammed. I also right now have this like base game parquet flooring. I ended up switching it for one of the parquet floorings that we got. Oh, I guess it's not parquet, but I got it for the, I ended up switching it for the flooring we got from Vampires, just because in the movie they have this bright red floor kind of like this, but I don't know. I just don't think it was visually working at the moment. You know, sometimes you gotta take liberties. And in the living room for the furniture, I ended up using base game with that one chair from Vampires. And I was trying to reference the kind of like beetle-esque shaped furniture and stuff that like the other Mother's World has. I don't know, I just thought it'd be fun. I ended up putting, you know, like a TV, a gaming system, you know, just giving you things to do here. That's another, when I build homes, especially bigger homes like this, I want them to feel useful. Like, I want you to feel like you can do things in them. Like, when I build a base game home, I don't really care if, like, if you're like, oh my god, my base game, or not just base game, but, like, my base game, starter home has nothing to do. I'm like, yeah, I had 20 simoleons. You get what you get. But you see here, I end up putting that door, the, like, secret door, and I end up building kind of like a secret passage. You'll see it in the images, but what I end up doing is I put a portal to the magic realm down here. And I don't know, I was just trying to reference that idea that like in this house you can go somewhere else. Like it isn't just one thing, if that makes sense. Like, you know, I was trying to capture that essence that's still in the movie. And I was trying to make it kind of feel like a little bit of a narrow passage. So that's what I do here. With like that, there's like a little narrow hallway that leads up to up there. Here I'm gonna start building Miss Fink's and Miss Forcible's or what would be their apartment. Once again, like in the save file I'm making, I did make the Jones family, but I didn't make anyone else from the movie or the novel. And my main reason being, I just didn't want it to be like pure fan fiction. I was thinking of them more just like a little reference, you know, something fun. And I mean, if I ever finish my save file and you end up downloading it, which I don't know if anyone's ever interested in that, but it would definitely be like open to the chance that you could do whatever you want there. But my idea for my own gameplay when I play in that home is, you know, I just have this family and there's a portal to the magic realm. Spooky. Which, speaking of which, so you can't lock the hidden door, but it won't necessarily mean that stops Sims from going down there. So I put a second door once you get down the stairs. I used one from Realm of Magic, and you can lock that door to keep certain Sims out from going down there. And my idea for that was just, I don't think Sims will naturally, like on their own, just go to the magic realm, but like I'm assuming for certain gameplay you probably don't want people just bibbity bobbity booing down there, you know. And here we're working on the garden. Like I said, I was using terrain tools to elevate the ground, and that's because, so in the movie, when Coraline's in the other mother's realm, the garden is shaped like her face, and then in the real world, it's like still has an illusion where it feels like it could be shaped like a face. Here I didn't want to necessarily be shaped like a face, but I did want that kind of like round feeling. So that's what I ended up going for, and I'm pretty happy with how it came out. I think it's, and I ended up really like filling it. I ended up using some stuff from Romantic Garden Stuff, which is a pack I don't always use. I really like the items from that pack, but I don't like the flowers, which I think is just kind of funny. You know, it's Romantic Garden Stuff. I'm like, yeah, the garden stuff doesn't work for me. This path here also, I struggled a lot to get the path to look good on this side here. Like, I feel like the path looks great on the other one, then this one I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Luckily, I guess, I don't know if it's lucky or not, but when I quickly closed out and then came back to it later for whatever reason. And I've noticed this happens a lot. And they every once in a while they say that they fixed the glitch, but then the glitch comes back. The terrain paint disappears, and I was able to do it a lot better once all the plants were placed down, rather than doing it and then placing the plants around it. It just like looked a little bit more organic. But yeah, so I used that little path there. I ended up putting a fountain from Realm of Magic out here, and then just like filling the whole thing with flowers. And my idea, once again, is trying to, you know, in the movie at least, the reason they move out there is because the mother and the father work for like some garden magazine. They're writers, and they go there with the goal to, you know, fill this whole garden or find a place to fill a garden. You know, it's you know, it's I don't know how realistic that is. I'm not a writer for magazines about gardens, so like, you know, who knows. I end up using that willow tree. The willow trees to me are weird in this game, where I don't think they look bad, but they're very big. And I know that's a complaint a lot of people have about The Sims 4, is like a lot of the furniture and a lot of the items are just like really like physically big. And generally speaking, a lot of the items don't bother me, but like, I don't know, there's something about the willow trees, how big they are, that I'm like, can they calm down? Yeah, like I think the flowers look fine in size. I do think some of the furniture looks big, but for the most part, I'm like, yeah, the furniture's fine. But yeah, some of the, like, I don't know, that willow tree is just like one of the items in the game that I'm like, can you take a chill pill? But yeah, I end up pretty much, I'll end up cutting out of the garden soon anyways, but I end up just, you know, literally placing millions of hours worth of plants down. And I like it. I don't think you get a buff from being in a garden. I wish you did. I know you get if you're an outdoor sim, you get a buff when you're outside, but I don't know. You know how like when you get a nicely decorated buff when you're inside? I wish you could get, I don't know, like a beautifully landscaped or something. I don't know. Because, you know, I spent a very long time on this garden. And I wish my Sims could go out and just feel nice. But, you know, there's things to do out there. Like, I put a lot of activities around. So, like, you can definitely, there's, like, reasons to go out in the garden, not just for aesthetic reasons. So, anyways, I'll probably start wrapping up around here. Let me know what you guys think of the build. Make sure to download it off the gallery and check out some of my other content. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.